What's going on, guys? This is my 1983 300D.
You left my heart out when the rest of me is down. You enchant me even when you're not around. Yeah, there are boundaries, I will try to knock them down. I'm latching on them, now I know what I have found.
Now, this is not my first 300D. This is actually my third. And my very first car was a 300D. My very first car was actually a 1980 300D. And that car had a lot of issues. It had just insane amounts of rust to the point where it was unsafe to drive. So, long story short, I ended up selling that car and I bought a second one. Well, my second one was a 1984, and that was a great car. It ran really well, but the body was in okay shape. It needed paint and it needed some rust fixed. So I actually ended up hitting a deer with that car. And after I hit the deer, I was kind of left with the question, well, what do I do now? You know, do I invest more time into this car and fixing it up, or do I buy another one? So I opted for option B and I bought this car, this 1983. So a little bit about this car's powertrain. We're dealing with an OM617.951 3-liter inline 5 single overhead cam 10 valve turbo diesel engine. And they ran this engine from 1977 until 1985. The same span as the W123 chassis, which this car is. So in 1977 to 1981, the 300D was actually the non-turbo version of this engine. Granted, there are a couple differences, but at the core of it, it's still a 3-liter inline 5, 10-valve diesel. But number-wise, that engine produced right around 85 horsepower. The turbo diesel option in this car produces right around 125. So, not a huge jump. This car is not fast, but it's so much better off than the non-turbo diesel, in my opinion. I mean, I drove a non-turbo for 2 years. I mean, I put 30,000 miles in that car, so I know what a non-turbo feels like, and it's not good. It's not good. So like I was saying, this car is not particularly fast. With its 125 horsepower, it has 200 foot-pounds of torque. So really, it's really torquey, and it feels really interesting. But get up and go, not really there. That's okay though, because this car actually averages right around 30 miles per gallon. So one of my favorite things about this car is the sound that it makes. It sounds so weird, and I'll be going through a drive-thru or something, and I've been asked more than once to turn off my truck. So I turn it off and everything, and when I get up to the window, they're always so surprised. They're looking around like, where's the truck? Because all they see is my little white Mercedes, and they're like, God, that sound's coming out of this. Is it broken? They never really understand what's going on here. So I think that's one of my favorite things about this car is just how weird it is. You know, it's not something you see every day. Granted, the W123 chassis from Mercedes is not a rare car by any means. I mean, there's millions of them out there. But it's weird enough, especially here in Ohio, because most of them were just victims to rust, like my first one and my second one for that matter. But it's so rare to see one this clean in Ohio that it does turn heads, and it does get people asking questions like, wow, is that worth a lot of money? And no, it's not. It's not worth a lot of money at all, but that's okay. Now, modification-wise, I haven't really done anything to this car. Honestly, I think I've been doing more of a complete stock restoration than trying to modify it out and really make it my own. The only thing I've done to this car is really put a cone filter on the engine, just so I could hear the turbo and the intake growl. But other than that, I haven't really done anything to it. I've upped the boost just a little bit, so I'm running 15 pounds of boost instead of the stock number, which is 12. So not a huge difference there. This thing has the Garrett T3 turbocharger, and it spools up pretty nicely. There is a little shaft play in it, so I know it's kind of on the fritz, but that's okay. This car actually has 208,000 miles on it, and for a diesel, that's not really a lot. The engine actually has more than that, though. The engine has 230 because my last car had 228 roughly when I pulled the engine out of it, and that was right around 3,000 miles ago. So actually we're talking about 231,000, give or take. But that doesn't really matter, it's whatever. The engine, it's so close mileage-wise, it's fine. Now if I'd had more like 300,000, that would be a notable difference, and I would probably make a note of that in the manual or whatever, just so I would know. But honestly, it's so close, it's whatever. So yeah, the engine has 230, the body has 208, the transmission has 5,000. It's a rebuilt unit from a shop in Columbus, Ohio. Yes, the transmission is a 4-speed automatic, so it kind of sucks because the transmission in these cars are known for being kind of hairy, and that's putting it lightly. They're not the best transmission, they're pretty tough, but trying to get the transmission to shift the same every time is really hard. And I don't know what it is, if I have it just insanely out of adjustment, which is probably what's the problem. What I've been seeing more and more in the Mercedes 300D community is swapping in manuals from a 240D Mercedes. Now the 240D was this particular body style. They actually ran the 240D longer than this car was in production, but the 240 was in the same body as the 300, and the 240 was the 5-cylinder engine with 1 cylinder cut off and no turbo. So we're talking 50 horsepower, and that's slow. That's terrifyingly slow. I've never driven a 240D, but I can only imagine how slow that is, because I know how fast this car is, and it's not very. So anyways, what people do is they'll take a turbo diesel 300D like this one, and they'll pull the sloppy old automatic out of there. They'll salvage the parts from a 240D manual, like the transmission, the clutch pedal itself, the clutch pedal assembly, and the master cylinder, and the slate, all that kind of stuff. And they will swap that into a 300D turbo. And if the transmission in this car ever goes, that's what I'll be doing for sure, because there's no question about it. And the truth is, I really don't know why I like these cars as much as I do. You know, they're not particularly good looking, they're not fast, they do ride really well, and again that kind of goes back to the independent rear suspension, and it actually rides on coil springs and gas shocks, so it really rides nice. So, like I was saying, I don't know why I like these cars as much as I do. They're kind of a hobby. But once you start driving them, and once you really appreciate, once you start thinking about the design quality and the build quality of these cars, you can really appreciate what it is and what it was meant for. This car was not meant to go down a track at 100 miles an hour. In fact, it's happiest right around 50. This car is geared great for driving right around 50 miles an hour. Between 50 and 60, it's very happy. It'll do 80 miles an hour all day long, but it's cooking, you know. The engine's turning about 3,500 RPM. I mean, this car is 33 years old, and I plan to have it much longer than that. So thank you guys for watching this review, and have a great day.